a few years ago, the digital penetration of Walmart would have been in the low single digits. And so it was less of a priority for brands, but we're seeing, pre-post pandemic, that penetration number double. For some items, for some brands, it's getting over 20%. And so it's a much more meaningful part of the business.
Hey everyone. On this episode of eCommerce Deep Dive, I speak with Ross Cully, co-founder and CEO of the Harvest Group. We talk about Walmart, Walmart.com, and their constant battle with Amazon. We talk about grocery, omnichannel, COVID impact on Walmart.com and omnichannel especially, and a number of other topics. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. Ross, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we've known each other for a while. It'd be great, though, to just give our audience a quick overview on you and Harvest Group.
Yeah. So Harvest Group is a leading omnichannel agency or broker that helps consumer packaged goods brands grow their businesses at key strategic retailers. Today, we work with Walmart, Sam's Club, and Kroger. And so I got into the retail and consumer packaged goods industry right out of school by joining Procter & Gamble, came straight down to their Walmart team, and just fell in love with the industry. Loved the game board, the competition, the teamwork, the strategy, and then decided to jump out and do the entrepreneur thing. So started Harvest Group 14 years ago at the kitchen table, and really started the company with the belief that the brokerage industry was broken. And so we broke the mold and decided to build an agency that was built on depth, a word that's not often used to describe agencies and brokers, and have been building the company the last 14 years. And our strategy and approach is tech plus touch. And so we've invested several $1 million the last 5 years in building digital expertise and technology, really for this moment in retail where digital transformation is happening. And so I get to do it with a great team and work with some great clients building their businesses.
Awesome. And just give us a kind of some perspective on scale and size. I know you guys have grown quite a bit in the last few years.
Yeah, we have over 100 teammates inside our company, and we touch a little over $5 billion in retail sales across those three retailers. So we've grown quite a bit from the kitchen table.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me specifically about what you guys do with Walmart.com.
So we have a full service offering where we provide managed services. So I mentioned tech plus touch. So versus a SaaS model or a pure human-based model without technology, we've really tried to combine those two. And so we put that to work against the basics of content. We put that to work against account management, analytics, replenishment. We'll talk a little bit, I'm sure, about Walmart's programmatic ad platform that they've launched here the first half of the year. So we're providing that for our clients, as well as strategy. And so when you think about Walmart.com, maybe different from Amazon, it is less transactional. There's more interaction with buyers, and there's negotiation and ways that you can fix things and negotiate things with the retailer. And so we provide some of that service as well as the technical back end to support the business.
Awesome. So what have you seen, and just for everyone's info here, it's May 13th. I feel like a week now is like a month, so it's worth noting the specific date. But over the last 2 months now, we've kind of been dealing with COVID as a society, as an industry. What have the impacts been to both, I guess, Walmart.com and then the stores as well?
Yeah, so I think the headline that you're going to see is just an increased penetration or a fast forwarding of penetration to the digital part of their ecosystem, using a word that one of your recent guests, Michael Zakor, used, that Walmart's really built this omnichannel or unified commerce ecosystem. And so we're seeing volume shift to the digital components of that ecosystem, whether that's ship to home, pick up in store, or delivery. And so when you look at some of the headlines, Bloomberg reported, kind of during the pandemic, that Walmart's app download was up over 400%. It was the number one shopping app downloaded for a period of time. And you saw some consumer surveys that a third of Americans bought their groceries online, nearly 40% of those for the first time, and 50% of those people chose Walmart. And so you're really seeing the grocery trip fast forward it onto the online part of the ecosystem. And so that's been interesting for us to see across our businesses. A few years ago, the digital penetration of Walmart would have been in the low single digits. And so it was less of a priority for brands, but we're seeing, pre-post pandemic, that penetration number double. For some items, for some brands, it's getting over 20%. And so it's a much more meaningful part of the business. And so I think Walmart's really benefited from just that changed consumer behavior.
Hey everyone, John Giorso here. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. I wanted to let you know that this episode has been brought to you by Orca Pacific, the agency I founded to help brands succeed on the Amazon platform. If you need any services that relate to success on the platform, whether it be content, advertising, SEO, help on the back end when it comes to operational support, etc., training for your team, or even just some advice on a place you may be stuck, feel free to reach out to our team. The best way to get in touch with us is on LinkedIn or at orcapac, orcapac.com. And with that, we'll get back to the show.
Yeah. Have they been able to keep up with it? I mean, in terms of just the increased kind of pressure on their supply chain, on the digital infrastructure, on fulfillment, on all of those elements of the business?
I think there's definitely been some choke points operationally as that all of that volume shifted so quickly, at both Walmart as well as we work with Kroger. So when you think about that pickup capability, you have store associates that are walking around the store shopping for those items. And then you have those pickup appointments where you're bringing it out. And so we saw kind of during the peak of the stay-at-home guidelines and orders across the country that at times there was a week of wait time to get that pickup appointment. And so I think that they've staffed up against that area of the ecosystem to where now it's much more reasonable in terms of a day or two ahead of time. But it for sure kind of operationally strained that part of the system.
Yeah. And that's to be expected. I know, I figured if Amazon had seen pretty significant disruptions, then, everybody else would as well. Was this click and collect program with Walmart has been very popular since they rolled it out. I know pre-COVID, they were already kind of rapidly scaling it up. I mean, I is a guess here, but has that been kind of a saving grace for them a little bit that they had that developed and already kind of ready to scale as this pandemic hit?
For sure. It has been kind of the growth engine of the digital component of their ecosystem. And so when you think about retail, if you kind of zoom back to 80s, 90s, Walmart really was the first convenient play, I would say, with the Supercenter, bringing the grocery trip together with a large assortment of general merchandise categories. So that was really innovative during that time, and it fueled a lot of their growth. And so when you think about Amazon's rise recently, it's really tied to similar things: large assortment and convenience. Their convenience has been, one-click buy and quick delivery. And so they've really nailed that general merchandise part of the assortment particularly, and still, kind of tinkering with grocery. And so I think Walmart's just coming at it from a different angle, and their main digital growth has come from that grocery trip. And so this has fast forwarded that. And so it'll really be interesting to see as time goes on, are they able to capture the general merchandise trip? Will Amazon figure out the grocery trip? And then an interesting play right now in the grocery channel, a lot of people kind of wrote off the grocery channel, but Kroger is by many accounts growing market share in the midst of this. So can they hold on to that? And then the economics of it all, right? And so Walmart will release earnings next week. Amazon released earnings where they incurred a lot more expense through this time. What does profitability look like as this volume has shifted? Will be fascinating to see.
Yeah, that's interesting. Your comment reminded me of something that Bezos says frequently, that there's a couple things that that customers will never change their mind about. They'll always want stuff cheaper. They'll always want stuff faster. They'll always want more convenience. Like there's some things that will never change in people's minds. So if you can lean into those, you're probably not gonna go wrong. And I know that that's kind of been Walmart's approach as well. So, even kind of pre-COVID, Walmart.com and I guess the stores as well, they're more and more interconnected. We're making some pretty big moves here. I know one of those that I've just found particularly interesting was kind of the new advertising play. Can you talk to us about that and what it looks like and honestly, like how it's been going for brands? Is this a real opportunity? Is it an outsized opportunity? Is it kind of a Me Too thing right now? What does it look like?
Yeah, so if you study Amazon, you for sure know that a big part of that ecosystem has been the advertising component, and that's something that you at Orca Pacific help a lot of your clients with. And so at Walmart, that component has really been missing, I think, a core part of the Amazon advertising ecosystem, which is the ability for brands to programmatically buy their own ads and turn the dials themselves. And so Walmart launched that platform the first half of this year, and you're really seeing brands begin to play there, largely through agencies. There is a self-serve portal where you can turn the dials, manually. But as you know, technology is really the way that you play well with the programmatic ad platform. And so we've been able to partner with Kinshu, which is a leading software advertising provider, and really help a lot of our brands as they launched this platform. Certainly from a retailer perspective, you get it, why they're interested in it.
Sure.
It's another part of the P&L. Similar to Amazon, it helps subsidize, some of the economics of e-commerce. And so from a brand perspective, we want to advertise where there's eyeballs, and we want to advertise where those eyeballs are closest to conversion. And certainly on site with a retailer like Amazon or Walmart is a great place to be advertising and reaching consumers from a targeted database perspective. And so we've been an early beta tester with Walmart on that platform. So we've been playing with it for several months. And to answer your specific question, we're seeing great results, in terms of positive ROAS on the platform. And one difference between that platform and Amazon's is the first auction versus second person auction. And so Walmart took a different strategy where from an auction standpoint, they are a first price auction where if you win that auction item, it's what you bid. So you don't necessarily know what the second bid was. And so there's some strategy that needs to be played out from a brand perspective to try to maximize ROI. Yep. But so far so good in terms of some of the results we've seen.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I know when Amazon first launched what used to be called AMS, their, search advertising property, because of the auction, CPC rates were 10 cents in some categories. And in fact, they were in most categories, where now today they're, $5, they're $50 in some categories. So the brands that jumped in really early, had, looking back on it, just ridiculous ROI, like absolutely crazy. Spending another 40 grand and driving $7 million in top line sales. Just like kind of silly results before, the masses all joined. I assume Walmart has probably learned from that, because if anything, Amazon was really sort of underpricing attention. Do you see dynamics right now, since this is kind of as new on Walmart as it was 5 years ago on Amazon? Do you see those same dynamics, or is it maybe a little more kind of in line with reality?
Well, an important aspect of answering that question is just to note that a lot of that programmatic sponsored ads inventory is on Walmart's Blue app. And for those that aren't as familiar with Walmart's e-commerce ecosystem, today they have two apps. There's a Blue app that really manages your traditional general merchandise, ship to home items, and then there's an Orange app that manages that grocery trip, that grocery inventory. They're in the process of integrating those two apps, but it'll be a one front door, but still two hallways in terms of how you shop that app. And so, to answer your question, I think a lot of the traffic, as we discussed earlier here in the podcast, is through that grocery trip. And we anticipate that sponsored ads will open up on that part of the site. We think that's obviously part of the roadmap, but at this point, largely been playing on that blue app part of the website. And so the traffic, obviously, depending on the brand, is different between which one's more important to them. But for sure, we see early adopters winning. We also, to your point, see Walmart learning about how to maximize the opportunity for them. And I think the thing that Amazon has learned, and all retailers want to try to capture, is that repeat purchase and that loyalty. And so when you do purchase something on Walmart.com, that becomes a favorite. It's added to your list. It's suggested to you over and over again. And so I think smart brands that have a long-term investment horizon are realizing, if I can capture a consumer now, that may turn into an annuity for me for years to come.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's something that brands on, I'm always looking at everything through the Amazon lens, but brands are understanding more and more on Amazon that it's there are real tangible features of the platform that are built around repeat purchasing. So it's not this sort of fuzzy theoretical idea of, we'll try out the product and hopefully they'll buy it again. Like, the site will pepper you constantly with messaging in different ways to repurchase. So essentially you're saying Walmart's kind of built out all those same, I'm sure in their own unique way, but kind of same features.
Yes. Yeah. And so if you buy something, a pancake mix, for your family to, when you go back, that's going to be a favorite. It's going to, auto populate towards the top of the list. And so there really is some motivation right now, as Walmart's ecosystem is young, for brands to invest at this time. And I think there's potentially longer term fruit for them to reap from that investment.
Yeah, interesting. So we talked a little bit before we hit record here about our Walmart's new shipping program. Is it similar to FBA? Is that am I looking at it the right way?
Yeah, so another move here in the first half. They've been busy on the digital side of the house, has been Walmart fulfillment services. And so it is a move towards trying to use their logistics and supply chain infrastructure to help third-party sellers sell on their platform. So again, if you're a retailer, another tremendous economic opportunity to serve customers with a broader assortment without holding that inventory at a good margin. And so it's very early days. I think it's much smaller at this point, as one might guess, versus the Amazon marketplace. But I think it's an interesting move that they're making, and one to watch for brands to see if that marketplace dynamic builds itself out in a similar way as it has on Amazon.
So how does this actually work? Is it the same as FBA, where a brand would ship product into a Walmart warehouse, fulfillment center, whatever they're called, and they still own the inventory? So then the brand is the seller, they sell it. Walmart handles the forward logistics to the consumer. I assume kind of all that similar to FBA. Do they handle reverse logistics, customer service? Then how does all that work?
Yes.
Okay,
so
got it.
Storing, picking, packing, shipping, and then the return customer service component as well for a fee.
Okay. So what's the motivation for a brand to do that outside of just going and working with Walmart directly and having them own the inventory?
I think it's a similar choice as on Amazon. But I think the uniqueness going the other direction is same on Amazon is control. And so I think you have some brands that are scared to sell Walmart directly when you think about their reputation for everyday low price and not being beat on price. And so when you think about a premium brand that maybe is selling in maybe the outdoor channel, or just as a premium product where they care about that price point. Similar to the Amazon Marketplace, you can access those consumers, but have more control over pricing and other things like that. So I think it's the same motivation.
Yep.
And maybe just more interesting for some different companies to consider that maybe it may be hesitant to put their brand in Walmart stores or give them control of the price point.
Yeah, that makes sense. Obviously there's a perception about Walmart, sometimes real, sometimes imagined. I think with premium brands, there's traditionally been a hesitancy to go into the stores. Do you see these premium brands looking at Walmart stores differently than Walmart.com, or I guess vice versa?
I think in certain categories for sure. And so we've seen in categories where they have authority, where they've got market share, you've seen some brands jump in that you might not have guessed. And so I think of a Harry's, a D2C brand that jumped into retailer and they're at Walmart. I think through other DSC brands that are more premium that have decided to get in with them and get that volume. And so what's been interesting is they come with a different negotiating strength sometimes. And so they come to the table and say, well, I need the experience to look like this. I need promotional support to look like that. But I also think that there are brands that will never live in a Walmart store that really should consider Walmart.com. I don't know if they're on Amazon.com, why they wouldn't consider Walmart.com.
Yeah.
Particularly if you have this fulfillment third-party option.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think, I don't know if you have demographic data. I remember reading an article a while ago. I think the demographic profile of Walmart stores and Walmart.com is fairly differentiated, isn't it?
Well, what I would say about that is when you look at the Walmart shopper, it's essentially the whole demographic of America in terms of who shops there.
Yeah.
Certainly they capture the lower end of the income and spectrum.
Sure.
But I think a lot of people go for that head fake thinking that higher income level premium shoppers don't shop at Walmart. And that's just simply not true.
Got it.
Definitely when you look at the averages or the median that they lean towards a certain side of the spectrum, but they have stores, which are essentially mini fulfillment centers as you get into delivery and pick up at store. Within 90% of the US, they're 10 miles from there. And so I think for brands to shortchange them to say like, hey, it's a lower income demographic, that's not my shopper, I think is short-sighted.
Yeah. Cool. What else has Walmart.com been up to over the last 6 months?
I think express delivery, they announced in the midst of this pandemic is another interesting move, as you mentioned, the Bezos quote, convenience in how we get e-commerce orders to customers and how quickly we've come to expect it was an interesting announcement. And so that's in 1,000 Walmart stores today, moving to 2,000. The selection's 160,000 items and gets there within less than 2 hours. And so again, this fascinating retail battle between Amazon and Walmart and their fulfillment supply chain infrastructure has been interesting to play out. And so it'll just be interesting to see where loyalties end up as they close the gap on the delivery timing that Amazon's had a lead on for many years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as long as I've been doing this, there's been this narrative of, Walmart versus Amazon, I think for pretty good reason. Do you think Walmart.com closes the gap?
I do. I don't know where the percentages land, but when you look at some other countries that are further along, maybe in their digital journey, take the UK, you do see penetration of the everyday grocery trip reaching scale. You see it reaching 40, 50%. And so we went from, roughly 10% to who knows where it'll land at the other end of this, but we took a huge leap forward. And so again, the question becomes, if you're already doing that through a Kroger or a Walmart, do you go ahead and make some of those other category purchases that to date have just largely lived on Amazon's shopping list?
Yeah.
And then vice versa, as Amazon cracks the grocery code. So I do think the gap closes. I think, the last few years we've focused a lot on growth percentages at Walmart. That's been the headline. I really think it'll be interesting as they announce earnings next week and over the course of 2020. Do we start moving the conversation towards traffic and actual sales and market share?
Yeah.
And so it'll be fun to watch for sure.
Yeah. Interesting. So it sounds like you think this battle is going to be kind of won or lost in the grocery category between Amazon and Walmart.
I think that's the next front of this battle is there. And that's the repeat purchase. That's where a lot of volume lives. And to me, the question is, just as the physical supercenter kind of was the innovation that disrupted retail in the 80s and 90s, can one of these e-commerce giants create the digital supercenter that captures, kind of that holistic trip? I do think you're going to continue to have folks that make that grocery trip at another retailer and continue to have a Prime membership on Amazon and buy other things via that way. But I think there's a good part of America that will pick where they're going to largely do their shopping as both these retailers expand their digital footprint.
Yeah, interesting. What are, as you see more and more brands, I'm assuming, especially over the last couple of months, taking Walmart.com and the Omnichannel piece of it more seriously, what are some of the biggest misconceptions or things that brands get wrong or do wrong once they kind of start to ramp it up?
Yeah, we've had a lot of those discussions over the past few months, and increasingly, as you might guess, in the recent weeks. And I think if you're head over e-commerce at a consumer packaged goods company, largely your focus has been Amazon, the last five to 10 years, if that position existed 10 years ago.
Yep.
But I think as you shift towards omnichannel retailers like Walmart or Target or Kroger, there are some different dynamics, and each of those platforms are unique. I think a couple misconceptions. One is that it's going to be just as transactional as Amazon is. And I think these retailers are much more partnership oriented. You're still dealing with a person, a buyer, where you're solving problems, getting things fixed, negotiating. And so that's a misconception in terms of what do I need up against this retailer, what capabilities and skill sets. I think another thing is content. Just the building blocks, right, of digital is having good content. The content on Walmart.com is there's much more control for brands. You can post rich media on product display pages, whereas Amazon's a lot more controlled.
Yep.
We also find some brands running into a trap where they have put in a PIM or a DAM system to house all of their content. And they think, I just get to press a button and it publishes over to Walmart.com. We've talked with a lot of companies that breaks down. And for one of two reasons, either A, there's an issue, something breaks on the way to publishing. B, the company bought it and didn't think through, we have to create unique content for each retailer.
Yeah.
Some of these retailers have unique fields and guidelines. And so they come to us with really unoptimized content when they come to us. And then I think the other thing is just when you look at the Walmart P&L, a lot of brands are looking, kind of at their shopper marketing budgets, their cost structure at an EDLC retailer and saying, where do I get the money to spend on Walmart.com with sponsored ads? How do I think about that money? What bucket does it come from? Does it come from trade? Does it come from an advertising budget? And so some of those questions are new, but that we're helping clients think through.
Yeah. That last one is one that we still deal with on Amazon a lot. I mean, it's this really unprecedented dynamic of having a large advertising platform and a large retailer with the same, you're using the same levers to drive awareness, to drive brand, to drive sales. So it really touches multiple parts of the organization. I mean, diving a little bit deeper into that, are there any kind of best practices there that you recommend just in terms of structure, the way of thinking about budgeting with these larger CPG brands?
We usually at Harvest Group try to start with, where are you trying to get to? What's your goal? And what's the time horizon that either you personally or your company is looking at, right? And so we love to talk with companies that want to win over the long term. And in that case, then you start with, okay, well, let's talk about where penetration will land in your category. What's the size of the prize? What's up for grabs here? As people move to shopping to this digital shelf? What's the loyalty of the category? What's the loyalty towards your brand? And if there's a high opportunity for switching, then in some cases, there's a significant amount of market share up for grabs as penetration grows digitally, because that shelf is dynamic. Sure. Physical shelf is much more fixed, but as we have a programmatic sponsored ads platform, as you know, from Amazon, it's much more dynamic. And so really, if a rule of thumb, if you want a metric, is, you take that percentage of the category that you think is going to reach penetration, and you look at that size of prize and you say, what's that worth to you? And if we can get a positive ROAS for you, what funds do you have available, no matter what bucket they come from, to spend there? So it's an interesting conversation. It's a new conversation for a lot of companies that honestly kind of get tripped up between silos and different functions and budgets. But the companies that can get out of their way are finding a way to win, and I think it'll pay off for them in years to come.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, having seen this play out, being a little bit further ahead with Amazon. I mean, the every single company on the platform, if they could go back 5 years, would have spent more money. They just would have. I mean, the kind of the legacy impact of that is almost always greater than they would expect. And I have no doubt that Walmart.com will grow in the same way that Amazon has, because it's inevitable. I mean, this shift in consumer behavior in technology is just, the tide is moving one direction only. And, the retailers that are big enough and savvy enough to take advantage of that will win. I mean, I think the question of who wins more than, the other, and how much share is shifted around, I think is an interesting one and going to be a fascinating thing to watch. But there's going to be multiple winners, and, every big e-commerce player today is going to be a lot bigger in 5 years. So that makes a lot of sense. Ross, anything else you think our audience would benefit from knowing?
I am just excited to have been on your show, and as you've talked and as we've had other conversations, it's a fascinating time to be in our business, and it's going to be interesting to see what plays out in the future. In many cases, there's times where I feel like what I'm experiencing today, you went through several years ago, and so as both these platforms mature and these retailers grow, it's going to be interesting to unfold. It's a fun time to be in our industry. Yeah,
I agree. It's fascinating. Okay, last thing. If brands want to get a hold of you, if they want to learn more about Harvest Group, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, they can check us out at our website, harvestgroup.com, or reach out at hello@harvestgroup.com. And we'd love to talk to them and see if there's a way that we can help.
Awesome. Ross, thanks so much for being on.
Absolutely, John. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of eCommerce Deep Dive. Be sure to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. And if you get a chance, go in and leave us a rating. It would help a lot. Thanks again, and talk to you soon.